Hi, everybody. So here I'm with Will from English for Startup Entrepreneurs. And there's so many things I have to ask because it's such an interesting topic to me. And I would like to start first, Will, by you telling us a little bit about your journey, like how you start, because it's very common for many of us, starting maybe from more teaching background and ending up more in the coaching atmosphere. And your case is very interesting because you are coaching entrepreneurs in Spain. So I would like to know more about your journey, how you get to where you are now.
Okay. Thanks, Anna. Thanks for having me on the podcast. First of all, my journey is well, I came to Spain 11 years ago here, and I didn't speak Spanish, so English teaching was the obvious career path for me to start my life in Spain. But as I've done it over the years, I've enjoyed it. No, I enjoyed it a lot. So I spent many years traveling from company to company in Madrid, giving English classes that way. And I've always had good feedback on my classes, that it was like learning English, but with a touch of coaching in it as well. Something that I didn't really think about when I was doing it, but this is kind of how the transition has come about there. And then, two and a half years ago, I had my first startup founder client, and to be honest, it was a challenge. It was a challenge because there were a lot of vocabulary that I hadn't heard before, so I had to learn the vocabulary. For example, bootstrapping. I didn't really have any idea what this was. It was like I was Googling it to find out what it was.
What
And
is what is it?
yeah. It's when you're funding the business with your own cash. Basically, you're not getting investment from outside, so you just from your own funds, you're funding the business. And I had no idea what this was at the time. And I just thought to myself, okay, these people, I think a lot of English teachers starting classes were found that would be in a similar situation to what I was. And I had the first client, then I got recommended to a second client. And then I was thinking, okay, there's a niche here, and it's a nice niche. It's very interesting niche. You learn a lot of things from these people. Entrepreneurs are really fascinating people, multi-skilled people, chaotic people. I think they have chaotic lives and admit it themselves. And but I thought, yeah, it's a really interesting niche. I spoke to the clients I had. I proposed, okay, I'm thinking of focusing my English coaching more on profiles like yours. What do you think? What are your challenges? What suggestions would you make? And I decided to go for it. So it's not been so long. It's been like about 8-9 months that I've been focusing purely on startups now, and just trying to focus on this and helping them. But it's a nice journey, and you learn a lot of things, and you get to see a lot of different sectors, and it's very rewarding when you see that your English coaching helps them to speak with investors from abroad, and that they get money, and that they can grow with that money, and that they do well. You can see that a couple of my clients, they are doing very well, expanding into different countries in Europe and looking to expand into the United States as well. So it's a really rewarding. So this is my journey so far.
Okay, so what in your background, like what do you think in your background makes the journey went so much into this niche, like coming from maybe teaching, but it's what you said, teaching was as coming into, in Spain, seemed like a normal career path there, but like what else, do you have any like background in business or like anything that make it so interesting for you? And like what are like the main differences of a teaching, like the teaching approach, and now that you are helping entrepreneurs like that?
The main. So my background is in finance. So I came. I was working in banking, mostly in mortgages and commercial mortgages as risk assessments or underwriting. It was where I came from in Britain. And I did lots of training of new staff there and training of systems there. So training was like a very natural thing for me to do. It's something I enjoyed a lot. Helping people there's nothing better than helping people. No, there's nothing better than helping people. So really taken to teaching like a duck to water, no, as the expression goes, and it's something that I can't imagine myself doing anything else other than what I'm doing now. Oh, and yeah, and I think I'm good at it, or at least this is the feedback I get from students and clients.
Yeah.
So
And you know,
yeah,
there is always like this thing that happens to many of us when we are like, because teaching has this different approach. You know, in teaching you follow like a textbook and like it's
yeah,
maybe focusing vocabulary in a certain way, but in coaching there is different aspects, and there is also sometimes we're more like people tell us that you're like my psychologist, you know, or there is something that's happening in these conversation groups or in these settings that tends to more therapeutical aspects. So I wanted to know also about how you experienced that before you became the coach for entrepreneurs that you're now, like when you were maybe working in companies, and like how you experienced that transition, because it seems to me it's a part of who you are, and the service or the willingness to help in that way. So like I would like to know how that manifested for you.
yeah. I think one thing that is clear, especially I think in Spain, well, I guess it happens in other countries as well. In Spain, here, is that a lot of Spaniards, they just like, okay, Spanish people speak English terribly. Oh, this is this is the stereotype, and okay, it's not as good as some Northern European countries, but like Anna, yourself, confidence is a huge part of how well you can communicate in a language. No, and if you don't have confidence, you don't feel like you can do it, then it's going to be very difficult for you. So this coaching, this English coaching, is also to give the people the feeling that yes, they can do it, and also and to give them strategies in order to stay calm when they're having to do a pitch or they're having to do a speech or in a meeting or whatever it may be. It's having the strategies to stay calm, and they have the ability. Most people have the ability. Most of the clients have the ability to do it. You just need to make them see they can do it. They can do it.
Yeah.
Because yeah, whereas teaching is it's about putting the building blocks of the language there. There's a lot of grammar and structures and pronunciation and everything else. Whereas the coaching has more this shoulder to cry on almost type part to it, and this is something that I feel good with, and it adds that extra reward to coaching for sure.
Yes, it's like
Yeah,
all the mindset piece, like the mindset, the beliefs that the person has. And for example, with professionals and entrepreneurs, because they need more public speaking, like for entrepreneurs, like when they have to do a pitch and like if they want to get a client or sell a project, there is that element of confidence and like how you communicate that is so important. So I would like to know also what areas of communication you find are key for the entrepreneurs listening to us feel more confident with their English. When if they are Spanish, because you coach mostly Spanish native speakers, yes?
yeah. All of mine have been native Spanish speakers. Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah. I think the main thing is obviously when they are pitching their product or they're having a meeting or they're at a networking event and they have to present their solution to somebody. Obviously, they believe in their solution, otherwise they wouldn't be spending so much time on it. Of course, they believe in their solution, but it's making the other person feel that belief and that's absolute. They're absolutely convinced that this will work, and making the other person, be it an investor or a potential business partner or a customer, making them feel in another language your passion, your absolute that you're absolutely convinced by it and that it's a great idea and it's going to be the next whatever Netflix or whatever you want to say. It's not so easy. It's not so easy to be so convincing in another language. So I think this is the main thing, though. And also then when you explain your idea to somebody, that person, that potential investor, is going to ask a lot of very tricky questions, of course. They're going to grill you about your business. And yeah, in Spanish, I think it could be a piece of cake. I think most entrepreneurs, they know it, they know the answers to more or less every single question that they could be answered in Spanish. It's a case of how do you express that in English as well. And this is a big problem. No, a big problem. And also obviously they have to understand the investor. They have to understand the questions in order to answer them correctly as well. This is also a big challenge now because the language of investors can be a little complicated sometimes. It can be a little complicated. Yeah. So these are big challenges for them for sure. Yeah.
Okay, and like for example, for the entrepreneurs you have worked with up to this moment, there is any story that comes to mind, like of thinking of like a great example of somebody that really like make a huge shift in their mindset, in their skills regarding English, and that manifested in a great success in their entrepreneurship, thanks to the working on the skills of communication.
Yeah, I think there's the first guy that I worked with. I think his English level is not advanced as such, but is kind of high intermediate. When he first came to me, he said that he'd had conversation classes in the past and that he hadn't had them for a while and he felt rusty. And it's clear there's a lot of self-doubt in him. A really talented entrepreneur, and in fact he's an example to a lot of entrepreneurs in Spain at this moment. His company is doing really well. Now, last year they invoiced 12 million euros across Spain and Italy. This is an incredible growth. Now they are the sponsors for some La Liga football teams. And when he first came, he had a lot of doubts now about him, and he's convinced that he has to study grammar now to improve his English. And the main problem you could see was the confidence in himself. He studied journalism. No, he studied journalism, so he knows how to communicate in Spanish. It's easy for him. So yeah, I mean, he pitched his business, he got investment, but I think probably the biggest thing for him is that he was going to do a speech at a conference in London. He was asked to do a speech in front of hundreds of people, and I remember he was really panicked about this, and we practiced. And yeah, I gave him encouragement, saying, "Come on, you can do this. You can do this. You're very capable of doing it." He went to London and he did the speech, and he said, "Well, it went really well. I felt really good." And this was the boost he really needed. He did this speech, felt good about it, and the next year he was invited to go and do another speech, and he did the second speech in London. So yeah, I mean, this is an example of how confidence is key, and obviously you have to learn how to communicate the things in a more simple way as well. No, is to go back to basics, to keep it simple, and it was a good success for him. And I can't take credit for his business growing so quickly, of course, but it's nice to know I played my little a little part in it. No, a little part in it. Yeah.
That's amazing. Like, yeah, you can see kind of that little part, but you play a little part on that success in a way. And something that you were saying, that it happens so much, like that maybe many professionals, they have in their mind that they need a lot of grammar rules and a lot of vocabulary, or this kind of idea of becoming advanced from their perspective, what advanced means, when actually it's exactly what you said. And I think that's such an important thing to break, like that most conversations are simple. Like most of the times the language that we use in many presentation or pitches is like simple. It's not that you need to have now like the vocabulary of Shakespeare or something, like that. And I think that's so important that you said.
Yeah, and I think another point is obviously, Anna, you are a non-native English speaker with a high level of English. Do you feel like you have learned all that you can about the English language at this moment? Probably not. No, it's a lifetime project if you have the objective of becoming a proficient speaker of English, great. Oh, great. Okay. But it's a lifetime project. It's years and thousands of hours. And, you have to be really dedicated to it. You have to be really enthusiastic about the English language, like you are, seeing series, books, everything, talking with people. And this is great. No, but if you need your English for a very specific purpose, like in the case of the founders, the entrepreneurs, which is, to build connections in other countries, to gain investments, to get customers, to get business partners, you need to you need to hone your English skills for this purpose quite quickly, because it's not being over dramatic to say the future of your company depends on this. No, it depends on it. If you're not just like even if you're just based in Spain, there's a limit to the amount of funding that you can get from within Spain. You have to go outside. No, so it's not over dramatic to say like the future of some companies will depend on their founders' ability to communicate in English.
Mhm.
This is
And
yeah,
sometimes many entrepreneurs or professionals, they procrastinate this skill because there is certain
yeah,
emotions they don't want to feel. And if they are listening to us now, watching us, wherever you are, this is the time for like, like you can call Will, you can like any coach that can help you.
yeah.
Let's make
Yeah,
that.
yeah, just anybody. It can help you. Any good one. There's plenty of good coaches
Mhm.
around. No, yeah, yeah, yeah. There's plenty of good coaches around, but yeah, you have to do it. This is the thing: is that an entrepreneur has a very long list of things to do. English is probably at the bottom until they really need it, and then it's like a last minute panic. Oh my God, I've got a pitch next week. I've got a meeting with a potential investor next week. It's quite late then. You can still prepare with a good coach, but it's a little bit late. I think in this case is to be proactive is important. If you have certain ambitions for your company, then to be proactive is a good thing. It's key. It's key, like everything else in business. Yeah, yeah, sure.
So, okay, I'm gonna turn a little now the conversation into pronunciation. That is an area that I'm very interested in because I think in Spain there is so little training on pronunciation, like very little. And I'm always trying to communicate the people I coach about phonetics, connected speech, because, for example, many people think that I need more vocabulary, I have to focus on grammar or things like that, coming from an academic perspective. But my approach is really like you need to like get the spoken English because many times with native speakers, it's not the written is not the same as the spoken. It's a different universe. So I like to
Yeah,
know what's your takes on pronunciation training, how you help entrepreneurs on that, and also that you tell us a little bit because you are from Manchester, right? So to
yeah.
tell us a little bit about your perspective on that and your accent and all of this. Okay.
Yeah, well, the Mancunian accent is not the perfect example of a like Queen's English accent, because I don't know, probably you would compare it to somewhere down in the south of Spain. That is because we cut words. We don't say Manchester, we say Manchester. No, and it's almost like the R doesn't exist on these things. So for me in Spanish, pronouncing the double R or the U and the R together is very, very difficult. But in terms of approaching the pronunciation in my one-to-one coaching program, there's a lot of focused on the vowels now, because the vowels are complicated. There's lots of different pronunciations of the vowels, and then there's also a specific focus on words that are difficult for Spanish, because I only work with Spanish speakers. I tend to focus on the the words or the sounds that they have real trouble pronouncing. So you've got the ism sound, for example,
For
no, or the
example,
ed sounds on the end of the verbs. Although again, if we're talking about prioritizing, no, maybe the ed sound on the end of the word is not like the biggest priority, because normally from context you can understand it's in the past. But yeah, this is something that's obviously they have trouble with, and so I'm not a total expert at pronunciation training. No, this is the thing, is that I did the TEFL course, but it was a very small section on pronunciation training in the
yeah, it's
TEFL
like
course
always
that I
like
took.
this small section. It's
And
crazy.
so 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 yeah, but in terms of, so that's pronunciation. I tend to take it on an individual basis, depending on what problems the person has, and I can identify it and work individually with them. So I don't have like a pronunciation program as such. No. With regards to linking and connected speech, this is something that I introduced to a lot of clients, that they didn't know anything about it. And it's like, this is, when I first start explaining it to them, they think, oh my God, this is something to learn. But the reality is, it helps you to speak English. It makes it easier for you to pronounce certain sounds if you connect two words together, um, such as uh, profit and loss. No, those those three words, they are linked together. You don't say profit and loss. The D sound disappears, no, and you say profit and loss. Oh, you say profit, fan, loss, no, and the words are linked together, and it flows out of your mouth so much easier. And yeah, of course, it means that two very difficult consonant sounds that are together, sometimes you can eliminate one of those and it makes it easier to pronounce. So this is something I include in my program, and I try to push it with the entrepreneurs and try to make them think about it within their pitches or their presentations. Where can you make it easier for yourself to say this, and to make it easier for the other person to understand you? It has the double benefit. It's easier for a native speaker to understand you. It's easier for the words to come out of your mouth with those difficult sounds. So it's something that is really worth making the extra effort to study for sure.
You sound more natural too. Yeah, it sounds
yeah.
And like it's great because in your case it's very specific on the fluency topic of entrepreneurship. So there are many areas of pronunciation, cognitive speech that are specific to that topic. That is great, because that's what mostly people need, very specifically on, because it's always like with fluency, it really goes on topics. And I always say, you're a doctor, it's a completely different universe of fluency, words, vocabulary, and to be more purposeful and focus on that area, on communication, so you can get very good at that, pronouncing certain words that are challenging for you on that entrepreneurship vocabulary, or like the connected speech that you can find there. So that is so useful,
Yeah, for sure. And with regards to the accents, because I think you asked me about accents as well. Know my opinion on this. Again, this area
on training.
Yeah, this is another thing though in Spain, is that people think the Spanish accent is horrible in general. No, Spaniards said this to me many times, and I think in our meetings before, I know I've said about the sexy hero or the sexy heroine character in movies. No, in Hollywood movies, most of the time has a Spanish or Latin American accent. So yeah, it's a Latino accent there. So this is not true. It's not a horrible accent. But in terms of I think accent reduction is good, but I think at the same time, I think your accent is part of you. It's part of your personality. It's part of your background. I'm not exactly from Manchester now. I'm from a town just outside. So I have quite a soft Manchester accent in comparison to somebody that comes from the city, and especially the north of the city. And I know that sometimes non-native English speakers find it difficult to understand certain words, but this is part of me. I wouldn't take away who I am. I'm not going to.
For somebody that has never been to Manchester, like, is it an industrial city? Like, what we can learn about that? Because it's like, I love really what you say, because I really believe accent and identity goes together. For me, it's American English, so I feel my connection is with American culture, and I love that there is that aspect, So
you
tell us about Manchester, like, that is different from maybe London, or like just for beginners, that have been to the UK or that haven't.
Yeah. Well, Manchester doesn't have a reputation for being a beautiful city, and I think Adorni now is the girlfriend of David De Gea, the Manchester United goalkeeper, and she made a comment on Spanish television a few years ago that Manchester was like looking at the back of a fridge. So, not very complimentary comments from her there. No. The thing is, Manchester, it is an old industrial city, and if we're talking like in the 80s and 90s, it was quite a horrible place to be. Then there was the IRA bomb in the center, which kind of miraculously didn't kill anybody in I can't remember the year. It was the early 90s now, and this destroyed like the city center, or the main shopping area, and they rebuilt it. But this was kind of a catalyst. The bomb was kind of a catalyst for the development of Manchester, and plus the Commonwealth Games. Plus the Commonwealth Games were held there, so they had to install some infrastructure. And then really in the last 10 years, the central government, there's a big imbalance between the wealth of the north of England and the south of England. So the Conservative government.
By the way, sorry for interrupting, but just said that, I remember that maybe here in Spain, the south is where people are more outgoing and more social, or whatever. I mean, the north is, and I think maybe there is the opposite. Yeah.
Here we would say the opposite as well. Manchester is a city where people are friendly. The local people are friendly, um, in a British way, because there are lots of people say British people are cold and everything else. But if you compare the north to the south, people in the north are genuinely, generally, sorry, more friendly and outgoing than people from the south. I told a story about some friends that they moved down to London, and obviously they were used to saying hello, good morning to the neighbors in the morning. And if you say good morning to somebody in London, they kind of look at you a little bit strange, like, why is this person talking to me? Oh, it's just like the basics of human interaction
Yeah.
sometimes.
Really
So
crazy.
yeah. This is the difference. This is the difference. But no, as I was saying, like Manchester is kind of it's had a lot of investment in it in the last 10 years. So now it is more, I mean, it's changed a lot in the 11 years I've been in I don't recognize the city when I go back now. It's a lot more offices, a lot more business. The transport is better. Uh, I hope that it doesn't lose its feeling because of this. Because one thing I'd say about Manchester is it's not about going and seeing beautiful things. It's about the experience. Everybody knows Manchester for its football. Oh,
Yeah,
we have
Manchester
to
United, yes.
obviously.
Well,
I'm glad you said Manchester United first and not City. Yeah,
it's the one that I know, basically. That's
yeah. And the music
the
is the
music.
other.
I was
The
gonna
music is
tell you
Manchester.
the music, yeah.
Manchester is a huge music city as well. So if you like going to gigs, Manchester is a good place to go. And then it has its industrial history as well. Now it's like the first computer was developed at Manchester University with Alan Turing, who was a very famous
Mhm.
mathematician. He worked at the university there, and there's been plenty of other things or movements or inventions that kind of started in Manchester. So it's got a lot of history there. And one more curious fact about Manchester, because it's for the obviously I think most people who are listening to this will be probably Spanish speakers, and Spanish comes from Latin. Do you know why Manchester is called Manchester?
No, I don't.
Do you know that is? Well, Manchester's a Roman city. The Romans arrived there and they established this city. And you've got the Roman fort. It's a very small fort in the middle of Manchester city centre. And I don't know the exact Latin words for it, but obviously mama in Spanish can mean madre, or
Mhm.
it can mean breast as well. No, it can also be. Well, the Romans gave a name to what I can't remember what it was, the Latin name for Manchester, but they gave it a name like this because there was two little hills next to
Okay.
it, like
Wow.
this. At least I don't. At least this is the legend behind it. No, and
There
there
are
was two
probably
little
many
hills,
jokes about that. Very many
and
jokes.
this yeah, this is the the origin behind it.
Okay.
It's nothing to do with men or man. No, this has another meaning to it. It's a pub quiz, a pub quiz question. This one, no, it's
Yeah.
like
Trivial question.
the curious facts. The
I
trivial
would have
question.
never guessed that in million years. I would never have guessed that is the.
No,
That's very interesting. So yes. And okay, and regarding, for example, so now coming a little into pronunciation, I also want to ask you about, because I love the work actors do on their accents. So I would
yeah.
like to ask you about examples that you find are great on. Um, I don't know any actor from Manchester, but maybe there are very famous actors from Manchester. Okay, but if you know, please go for that. But British actors that make great American accent, or the other way around. So I would love to know examples of that you really like.
Yeah. I mean, the American actors doing British accents. I think the one that really springs to mind is Johnny Depp. I think he does a good British accent, although he was born in London. He does have some kind of roots in the UK, but of course his natural accent is that he's American. But more or less, I don't know. Most of the films that he does are
They
are with a
normally,
British
yeah,
accent.
they normally
Yeah.
say it's more difficult for American actors to do the British accent than the other way around. That is easier
Yeah.
for a Brit to do an American accent. Yeah.
Yeah. I think so, because there's so many the American accent. I mean, I don't know a lot about it. Probably you know more than me about it, but obviously America is a country that's made up of many different cultures.
Yeah.
So the accent is influenced by Italian, Irish, Mexican, Latino accents is this huge influence from all over the place, and obviously the native Indians, Native Americans there as well. So when I've spoken to some American people about this because I was curious. No, because of Tom Holland and other
Yeah.
British actors that are very big, or Benedict Cumberbatch as well, going into the States and doing American accents in some of the Marvel films or any other movies. And I say, okay, what do you think about the accents of these people? Did they do good American accents? And the feedback I got is okay, there's so many accents in America that they couldn't tell. They couldn't tell. So the answer is yes, it's a good American accent because nobody could really tell that they are
That's a good
British.
side. That's a good side of playing an American. What would
Yeah.
be like in the case of making a British accent then? Like the things we have to bear in mind, because for me I know there is this Queen English, the variant, like this the standard Queen English guy kind of for Downton Abbey, for The Crown,
Yeah.
that like whenever I'm watching the Crown or something like this, it's such a contagious accent, like, and for
Mhm.
me it's so strange because for me it's like, okay, if you have an accent like as a non-native speaker that I create my immersion bubble in American accent or in American English, it's like all my English goes in an American taste, So
Yeah.
suddenly I say something in a British accent, it's like it's strange. But
Yeah.
sometimes you're watching a series and it influences you, it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. That
But for
does.
me, I really recognize the Queen English, but then it's very hard for me to recognize any other like dialect, like Scottish and Irish, of course. But then it's hard for me, and there are so many, aren't they, in the UK? Many
Yeah.
variations and
Yeah, there's a lot of accent variations, and in a very short distance as well. One of the classic examples talking about Manchester is you have Liverpool really close. No, I think it's in kilometers. I think it's like 45 kilometers. You can go from the city centre of Manchester to the city centre of Liverpool 25 minutes on the motorway. There's a motorway that connects them directly, and it's two different accents. Two different accents. Then you go further east and you go over to Leeds, which is also just like 45 minutes to an hour drive, and you have a Yorkshire accent, which is again totally different. And then where I'm from, which is in a town called Wilmslow, just south of Manchester, the Manchester accent doesn't really exist there, no, so much. I think it's because I spent a lot of time with people from Manchester. I've got a little bit of the more Mancunian accent into me, but from Wilmslow, it's quite posh there. So it's like Cheshire is the county that is below Manchester, and Cheshire is considered like a little bit posh, not the Queen's English. But again, it's another accent. It's another accent that's really close. And then you go another half an hour's drive further west, and you're in Wales, which has another accent. So because it's a different country and they have a different language, which is totally different to English, and it's another accent there. So there are a lot of accents to come. And then another point is that obviously you have a lot of people that have moved to Britain. There's a lot of, I don't know, third generation. It must be third, fourth generation people from Pakistan moving to Britain. They are now British citizens, no? They're as British as I am. But they have like their Pakistani accent mixed with a Mancunian accent, or their Pakistani accent mixed with a Birmingham accent. So this
that's
is another
beautiful
this
because
is
it's a
another
new
this is another
language.
one.
Yeah, it's a new language. Like,
Yeah, and
yeah.
it's really fascinating. It's really fascinating, the mix of accents. And then also another thing that's funny is like footballers that have come to play for Manchester United. Some of them have taken the Mancunian accent as well. When they've stayed there for a while, you can hear a little bits of it in their accent.
Hey,
It's quite
football
curious.
is a strong football.
It's
Like
quite
yeah,
it's
it's
quite
quite a
curious.
phenomenon. Yes.
Like Paul Pogba, who is a French speaker. Now he went through the academy at Manchester United, and when he returned to Manchester United at the age of like 24, he went to Turin and was there for, I don't know, 6 years. He came back, and his first interview with the club, you could hear Mancunian still in his French accent there, and it was very curious, very
It's
curious.
very curious. But
Yeah.
it's exactly what you said, that the language and identity are they go together, and language is about community, it's about belonging to a community, and like the connections we create and the relationships we create. And that's why I always say, you know, that your journey with the language should start there. And then, of course, there are other aspects about it, but that you find a sense of connection with your voice. And like, for me, it's like, okay, get a reference. And maybe in the UK, if you get, because for anybody, it's going to be different. If that's British English, then you get a reference of the way you want to sound in this British English. But, you know, then there is so many like ways of speaking the language, and they are all correct. So my kind of the thing for me, it's like, there is not a correct or incorrect because of that.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Speaking.
No, for sure. Yeah. I know it's without accents, the world would be a little bit of a more boring place. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, totally.
Yeah.
Okay, and going now into, because I always tell my clients and the people listening, or whoever wants to improve the skill at home or whatever, that we should start creating an immersion bubble in English, you know, and using series, using movies, using books, everything we can get. And now with the digital world, it's easier than ever with Amazon or whatever. It's easier than ever to do this, because before maybe we had to live in the other country, but now it's easier than ever to do it at home. So I always recommend series, movies, things that are adapted to intermediate speakers. So those of us listening that are at an intermediate level, and from there they want to improve their fluency in that. And I always like to ask this question of what will be series that you would recommend that you find they are good quality, that are adapted for people listening to us, and also because it's entrepreneurship, the topic in your case, on entrepreneurship or business, that you think they should start watching right now.
Yeah. I think for my niche, no, for the startup entrepreneurs, and when I've done like little clips of series in my sessions or things to talk about and to participative listening, there are a couple of series that they're not fictional series, but they are kind of reality TV series, no, which is Dragon's Den is one of them, and then there's an American. Well, I think they did an American version of Dragon's Den, but I think the main one in the United States is Shark Tank. And these are two series where entrepreneurs can go and they pitch their businesses, their business ideas in front of some investors, and then the investors ask them a lot of questions, and then they make a decision whether to invest in them or not. For obvious reasons, this is a very interesting one. For entrepreneurs, and also as entrepreneurs are quite busy people, probably spend a lot of their day working on their project. The thing is that you can break down the episodes into smaller pieces with these, because the pitch and question sessions in these episodes is like 10 minutes, so you could just watch one pitch and the questions, and it's 10 minutes. You've got no excuse for not reserving 10 minutes for yourself to watch something. So I think these are two very useful series to see how a native speaker, and also some non-native speakers that go on the show as well, that are living in Britain or the USA, how they present their pitches is something that is really valuable. I think, okay, it's reality television, so it's very obviously they add drama to it and everything else with the music and the cut scenes, but it's still very useful. It's still very useful and can help there. Other business programs are The Apprentice is also, I don't know if you know this one as well. It's a little bit of a different style, because it's kind of you're watching the progression and the elimination of apprentice. But I'm talking about the British version here, because I think maybe the American version will not be so appealing to people now, because Donald Trump was the one that did this series. Now, in Britain, it's a businessman called Alan Sugar that does it. But this is also focusing on lots of different aspects of business as well. Again, it's like reality television shows. There's drama added to it, of course, as well. No,
great idea. Yeah, it's very. I think TV is so great. I've been the last one I was watching Love Is Blind. I don't know if you know this show, but it's like a very interesting show, because they get to people together that they don't see each other, and it's like a dating scenario. And like, you know, that everybody's based on looks. Like, it's like you don't see the other person, you know, it's across a wall. But I really like the fact that you get, because each program, maybe they do it in a different state. So this one is in Texas, this other is in Austin. So you really get to meet people that are very real Americans, like their things, for example, the types of aspects of American culture regarding religion, or things that I'm like, wow, it's so different from here in Spain, like the mindset, you know? So I think reality TV is such a great compliment, you know, and the cultures that are perfect for somebody that is in entrepreneurship. Really good ideas. And also normally reality TV is not difficult to follow because the language is not as, you know, maybe the jargon on entrepreneurship in those shows, but normally it's easy to follow those.
It's not so complicated, and it's not that complicated, I think, to follow those. And and then if you want to experience something that's more, you know, a bit lighter, then a bit, I think The Office USA, I know a lot of entrepreneurs, I think the US version is better than the British version in this case. But I know it's a comedy and it's over the top, but it does give you kind of insight into the office culture of working in Britain, if you watch the British one, because it's like taking the office culture and blowing it up into a comedy. No, but the roots of where the jokes and everything come from are real scenarios that you find in offices. So yeah, for knowing about the office work, I think it's something a bit lighter, and if it's your type of comedy, then you will obviously enjoy it. But
it's a type of humor too. Yeah, with the
it is
true. I think it's very good, like that series. Like Steve Carell is the actor.
Steve Carell is the actor in the American one, and you got Ricky Gervais, who is you know, I love him or hate him character. No, I love him or hate him comedian in Britain. It's a little bit more, I think the British version of The Office it's very British, and I think it's a very British kind of dark humor that they have in this, and therefore I don't recommend it, because I think it could be a little bit, the cultural difference is quite big. When people think of British humor, they think of like Monty Python and everything like this, but really modern British humor is like very dark.
It's like Black Mirror, isn't it? Like Black Mirror is this, there is this genius, but there is this darkness to it, you know.
This is kind of British culture these days, especially with comedy. It's to be a bit darker, to push the limits of what is acceptable, to really push the limits of what is acceptable. So obviously this can be difficult for somebody from a cultural, not from a language point of view, but from a cultural point of view, it can be difficult for people to understand. So I think, okay, everybody more or less knows what the Americans are like. So the Office USA is better.
I watched that one.
I think it's better, and I think it's more appealing and more understandable for people in general.
More mainstream, more for types of audience. Whereas the British one, it will be more special. Like it will not be maybe for everybody. Okay.
It's designed for Brits. This one for sure.
But that's why it's so important, the culture thing, because it really humor is huge. Like things that maybe would be hilarious for a Spanish speaker, maybe not for a Brit or whatever, and you get to understand the culture too because of that. It's, it goes both ways. But...
because I remember reading, there was an article a few years ago, I can't remember, I think it was in the Sunday Times, I don't know if you know about this, Anna, and it was an article about visiting Spain, I think, and about the Spanish culture. And I remember in the Spanish press here, I mean, it was supposed to be kind of satire. It was a satire, so it played on all of the Spanish stereotypes now that you hear. And I remember the press here, they reacted really bad to it, and people in general reacted really bad to it. I read the article and I thought it was pushing it a little too far, but this is kind of the British humor. But we don't only do it with other cultures as well. We do it with ourselves. This is the thing, because we make fun of ourselves, we think we can make fun of everybody else as well. No, it's like
it's disrespectful, or it's like it's not disrespectful. It's just it's what you say. We make fun of ourselves because it's different. There is
yeah,
a difference between, I love humor, so I'm a huge fan of humor and I love it. But there is a difference when people are basically bullying you through humor, and it's different, and to me, that's kind of that very subtle difference, because if there is this respect, then I wouldn't like it. But if it's just that, if it's like, let's laugh at ourselves, we are the first ones doing it, then, it's different. But when there is respect,
But you have to understand. You have to understand. Yeah, you have to understand the other culture. But the cultural differences, like for example, the word "giri" in Spanish is a word for foreigners. Oh,
yeah, but it's not nice.
in 2020
It's not normally nice. Yeah.
in 2023 in Britain, if you had a word especially for foreigners like this, it would be like really, it would be a big topic. It would be a big topic, like this is not really right. Oh, and this type of thing. But it doesn't bother me personally, though. It doesn't bother me, and the jokes about balconing that that I get don't bother me too much either, because I understand how Brits are when they come to Spain. But yeah, there's cultural differences there you have to understand. And language, bringing it back to language is really important to understand the culture importantly. No, without, if you didn't speak English, Anna, you could read about American culture, but you wouldn't truly understand it because you didn't speak the language. And it's the same for me in Spain. No, I read books in English about the Spanish culture before I came here because I was interested, but you don't really know the culture and feel the culture until you speak the language.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And it's also so important, even, thinking of business, because you have like clients or whatever. And it's also the culture element, because you connect more when you're curious about their culture and you're curious about understanding those cultural differences. Like, why you're not laughing at this joke? Now I get it.
Yeah.
I think it's, like, to me, it's very like a fascinating thing. And maybe I'm very curious, about those culture things. And, for me, it's fascinating. It blew my mind when I knew that different cultures, the emotions change. That's huge, knowing this. Like, we don't feel the same way, and that totally correlates with humor. So I think that's very important. Okay, so we are coming more to the end of the interview, and for the last kind of question, I love reading. I think also reading is such a great thing to improve as a communicator, like all the passive skills, listening, reading. So I always like to ask you books that you find really useful for developing the skills on communication or the mindset on entrepreneurship. Like somebody listening to us, a book that you will stand out, like go for this one, that they can read in English, that is really interesting to develop these skills that you will like.
I think this the first one that jumps to mind, and probably most entrepreneurs have already read it. But I always encourage them to. What language did you read it in? Spanish. Okay, read it in English and next, because then you get the English view of it. No, but the Lean Startup is. I don't know if you've read this one. No, is a good book for startup entrepreneurs. No, it's a very good book about processes, and I think obviously you practice the language and you hear all the vocabulary as well that is associated with the startup ecosystem. So this is very good. Luckily, this vocabulary is not translated from Spanish to English in most cases, no, because startup is not translated. So normally vocabulary isn't a problem so much for startup entrepreneurs, but I think you can also apply the learnings about how to build a company in a lean way. You can also apply it in how to, speak English in a lean way and exactly, instead of trying to use long, complicated sentences with all of these fancy words from a thesaurus that you found and you're really proud and you want to use them, is to keep it simple, and keep the message clear, simple and clear. And I think this is a good message also for improving the way that you communicate in English as well. But there are lots of books out there. Basically, I think startup entrepreneurs, they've read a lot of books because they need to do it. And but yeah, I think the lean startup is probably the best one I've read that helped me to understand my niche now as well. It was good to understand the startup culture as well. It's the same for me. I have to speak the startup language in English to understand the culture, to
And
understand
culture, yeah, you
my
have to
niche.
understand. It's like what we said
Yeah.
about the cultures, that each niche has a culture on its own and a
Mm.
language, and you need to understand. And like with Lean Startup, I think it's so useful, even, you know, whereas you are an entrepreneur or not, because it's about exactly what you say, process, understanding that, you know, you have to have a very realistic mind and goals, instead of thinking, okay, I'm going to make a multimillionaire company. No, start from
Yeah.
today, you know, and
Yeah.
trial and error, and from the trial and error then you get your results, and then from there you can grow. I think it's such a useful perspective on growth for any,
Yeah.
not only business but for life, even for life, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's the entrepreneurial journey is a journey, and life is a journey. No, you learn new things, you apply new skills, and yeah. I think this is life. This is life.
So, okay, well,
Yeah.
thanks a lot
Mm.
for everything. I mean, it's been amazing, everything that you, I think people have probably like listening to us, like enjoy so much, as I have been enjoying so much, everything that you shared. I don't know if there is anything else that you would like to, that maybe we haven't touched, that you would like to like share with the people listening regarding your program, and also where people can find you, of course, and your courses and what you're up to now.
Yeah. Well, in terms of my program is I have a one-to-one program which is 12 weeks, 12-week program that I work with founders that are working on key skills in terms of networking skills, communicating at networking events, elevator pitches, working with them on their pitch in English and helping them to ask and answer lots of questions. These type of essential skills, you know, like the priority skills is what the program is for, as well as communicating with emailers and things like this. And I also offer some smaller challenges now for entrepreneurs that at this moment maybe it's not such a priority for them, but they would like to improve their skills. I do like a very short 5-day challenge with like 10 minutes per day. You do a different activities to practice your English as well. And in terms of where they can find me, it's on LinkedIn is probably the best place. Will Gayle, I suppose you'll put the links maybe below
It's gonna put
these
everything,
things now,
yeah, put the links
and
below,
and
yeah.
and englishwithwill.com is my website. Oh, in case you want, and if they want to have a chat, I'm always open for a chat and to give some advice. It's my pleasure. Yeah.
So thanks a lot
Yeah.
for coming to the
Yeah.
podcast, for sharing
Yeah.
all your wisdom
No.
and all the things you shared with us. It's been really
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Anna. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.